Also
Okay,
very,
okay. So,
very nice.
so now we play against Olafsson.
He played, yeah, he
He
is
played.
the well-known grandmaster from Iceland. Later on, he became president of FIDE, of the
Chess Federation.
International Chess Federation, and he was a very good president. Okay, finally he disappeared later on. He was very old, but okay, very strong player. He was between the candidates and so on. A lot of successes against very strong opponents. And okay, this game against Bobby is also very important theoretically. First of all, because Bobby played against the Sicilian check in b5. He never played like this, in normal games later on. It was considered a quiet game, this one, to give check in b5 in their game and later on, all the time. But you can have some surprises. You remember my game against Kavalek, it was a beauty prize in 19 moves or something like this. Black made a small mistake and it was enough. So, okay, here we have the main line. And instead of queen e2, white can play immediately d4 or c4, knight c3 and d4. Small edge for white. Okay, queen e2 is the alternative. And after queen e2, black plays normal g6, puts the bishop in g7 on the big diagonal, and now white tries to come later on still to d4. But immediately to come to d4, you have to give a pawn, for the moment, you see. So, therefore, the game is very important theoretically. Bobby will give the pawn for the moment, for a few moves.
Which pawn?
D, you see. Later on, he can take back the pawn, very complicated position, and later on, he has a better game, and finally, he realized. Very complicated game, anyway, because Olafsson was a very strong player, I tell you. So, okay, bishop g7, and now rook d1. Now, again, if you don't want to give immediately the possibility to come to d4, you have to put the pawn in e5. So, okay, e5, knight a3, he's preparing a little. Knight e7, and now he gives the pawn. He plays d4. And now, the problem is, he took in d4, normal, no? He took back, and here, now we know the theory. I played also myself with black this, many times. It's better to take immediately with the knight. If you take with the knight, it's very complicated but unclear, By taking with the pawn, which is normal, white is always a little bit better. Complicated, but always a little bit better. So, okay. He too, it's not a mistake. It's possible to take with the pawn. But it's easier to play like this with two knights on board instead of having only one knight on board. Therefore, it was better to take with the knight. It was easy to defend, easier to defend. Okay, so he took knight b5, castle. Now it's clear he gave back the pawn. You see, and here he took and d5. That was the hope. Now, if nothing happens in 2-3 moves, he's all right. Black has a good game. But it's not so easy because the position is still very complicated. It's not easy at all. So now Bobby, of course, doesn't take in d5. He takes in d5 is very little. Knight takes back and very little. So knight d3. Now he wants to have, like in many other games, the Isolani from d5. Black doesn't lose the pawn d5, but he has some small problems all the time, because of this weakness. So knight b3, a6, okay, knight c3 back. Now, if you want to get rid of the knight, you have to give the bishop. Now, of course, nobody gives the black bishop. So if not, you have to accept the fact that the pawn is a little bit weak and you have to push. So from now on, the small advantage from white, from white is clear. White controls the squares. By knight, he has time to put later on the knight in a4, controlling the squares b6 and c5, and therefore white is a little bit better all the time. So, okay, knight a4, rook a8. Now, quickly, something, tactical. So bishop f4, provoking, the continuation, what happened in the game, So knight d5, it seems that she's more or less all right now. So knight d5, bishop g3, and here queen e7. So what to do? Move by move. Knight c5, of course. And king h8, preparing f5. This is the idea, the hope is to play f5, active.
But wasn't a good one to attack the
b6
knight?
is not so good because after b6, he has time to take with the queen in a6. And then when he takes in c5, he takes in d5, pawn up, and completely winning position for white.
Okay.
So he prepares, white can't take in d5. So it seems that black is more or less, okay, let's say, playable. Rook e1, knight back, and here, rook c1, preparing again. Now, if you are not careful, you lose a pawn. He wants to take in a6. And,
Yes.
that
Take
knight
them.
from c6 is attacked. So, all right. f5, I have to play very active. So, right, queen d2. Again, very simple, but now it's clear. You put the pawn in f5, the position is more open, and white is better in every position, you see. He is waiting to provoke you, to play f5, and now what you took the chance and you play f5, the game is very open and is better for white all the time. Now, if you take in e4, it's clear. The rook is coming to e4. The advantage is clear. The initiative is very strong. Enough. By this high level is probably enough. So starting from here, black tries to defend in the best way, but it's very difficult, I tell you. It's a small edge, but in many positions enough. You see. Okay, so he took with the pawn, of course, no? And here knight d3. He blocks, the pawn from d4, controlling all the squares, f4, e5, the black diagonal, and so on. You see now the difference. The black bishop from g3 is better than bishop g7 because he has an open space, The bishop from g7 protects the pawn from d4 but doesn't play. The white is, controlling the diagonal and the bishop is very strong. And therefore, the advantage is clear. All right, so now we see the technique. Knight d5 back, and this is coming, no? Bishop d6, provoking another small weakness. And now he has time to come again, knight d5. Opens the line, you see. So you have to take now there. And takes, but first in e8. Now you have to take, and now queen takes. Now we see the result. Very little, very little. It's very small advantage, but it's clear. Why? Because you have activity for white pieces, a small weakness in f6, in f5, and better structure, All the white pawns are better,
Yeah.
So therefore, we have the game continuation, which is very instructive because, as I told you, Bobby was very young, He was not in his best years later on, So we see h6, black is trying to resist, of course. And here, what did he play here?
G3.
G3, yeah. He's preparing to put a piece in f4. He wants to eliminate the very strong knight from d5, you see. So, okay, so after g3, here knight f4, and okay, he has to take. Bishop takes back. Now again, why is better for white? Because he threatens to come immediately with the rook in c7. Attacking, on the 7th rank, trying to take one pawn at least, and the initiative and the attack continues all the time, Now it's clear why the 3 pieces of white are much better than the black pieces in every position, Queen e6. Okay, now he has to realize the advantage. Bishop d2, trying to put the rook in e1 now, you see.
To change the rooks?
Yeah, if he comes to c7, it wasn't good because he had time to put to trade queens, and maybe he escapes, Therefore, by one tempo probably, but it was enough to escape, you see. So bishop c8. Now he wants to trade some pieces, you see. But now rook e1 and queen f7, and now again move by move, and excellent move, rook e7. It was only here the small mistake. Instead of queen f7, probably it was better to play immediately queen g6 with a small chance to escape. But already black was in time trouble, So he played the normal move, queen f7. And now
Yeah.
it's clear, after queen f7, rook e7, everything is forced, because now if you take in e7, after queen takes with check in f5 and rook, king somewhere, and queen takes c8, is winning for white, every end game. So queen g6, and from here, everything is forced. We have to admire his technique, Not very difficult, because the position is very easy to play, but you have to avoid any checks somehow to give you one check by chance somehow to make a draw or something, So you have to realize the small advantage. So here is bigger, the advantage, of course. Yeah. So, right, therefore, trying to have something, to play a little, So queen d5, centralizing the queen, you see? He doesn't take the pawn. The pawn is not important. Why? Because if you take immediately the pawn, he had a small chance, good chance to give one check in b1. And is almost draw, or maybe draw. Because on king g2, he plays queen e4 check. Enough to make draw, So you have to be careful until the end. So, okay, rook e8. He was controlling the diagonal, So here he took the pawn in f4, check, king g2, and queen d3, the last hope. It seems that he's doing something. The threat is queen f1 check. And now very, very easy, very quiet, king h3. Black can resign here. No. 2 pawns up and no chance at all.
Why? Because
No, it's no check. If you give one check in f1, even queen g2 wins,
Okay.
Everything wins. Even king g2, queen g2, king h4, king somewhere, everything wins. By one tempo, but it's enough, of course. All right, queen back, and now rook d7. He gives you the move. You have to do something. What? One move. h5, the last hope, queen g4 check, maybe somehow. And here, what did he play? He came back with the king. Now, you can't come back with the queen in d3 because you lose the last pawn in h5.
Oh, I see.
So, of course, now here he resigned, no? Or what?
No, he pushed.
He pushed, okay. He pushed the rook d6 and
Resigned.
he resigned. But look, almost from nothing. It's unbelievable, the technique. Unbelievable. But it's high level, it's understandable. But it's understandable, a very strong grandmaster. Later on, Fischer, if he played like this, nobody would, command.
Be surprised.
Yeah. But 16 years old, you can imagine such a technique.
Yeah. He understood very well.
Fantastic technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, he understood very well, very small, detail from every position like this. Positional, tactical, everything, You could see already, preparing the genius from later on.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic player.
Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
You're welcome.